The Majestic-12 Fifth Annual Report. Three. Conclusions. 1. Current studies of otherworld visitation are in 3 phases. A. Technology exploitation. B. Interplanetary travel. C. Cultural communication. 2. On 19th September 1947, the IAC, JIOA, and the JIC reviewed a top-secret intelligence report titled Report to the President, 1947, Parts 1-5. Magic Eyes Only, DTG 000190947. The report mentions, in compliance with your directive. Of 9th July 1947, the attached report on flying saucers is respectfully submitted. In consonance with your instructions, advisors from State, Treasury, War, and Navy departments assisted me on a 2-month exploratory mission concerning the reality of otherworld visitation. The principal investigators in storage areas were visited. Successful efforts were made to reach scientists of all levels as measured by their work in classified defense projects. Conferences were held with national security officials and leaders of private industry. Approximately 1,200 memoranda and intelligence reports were considered. The report presents this situation against a global background, my estimates, current and projected, in both the U.S. and allied countries, and recommendations deemed to be sound courses of actions for formulating plans and policies in light of recent developments. 3. All efforts have been made to identify the country or private concern which could have the technical and financial resources necessary to produce such a long-range flight. So far, no country on this earth has the means and the security of its resources to produce such. 4. A consensus reached by members of the panel that until positive proofs that the Russians did not attempt a series of reconnaissance flights over our most secure installations, the sightings and recovered objects are interplanetary in nature. 5. The occupants of these platform vehicles are, in most respects, human or human-like. Autopsies so far indicate that these beings share the same biological needs as humans. Four. Discussion. A. Nature of the investigation. An analysis has been made of the first 100 intelligence reports in the ATIC interrogation reports and the ULATT exploitation Majestic series 1 through 25, prepared by the Military Intelligence Section of GHC/IPU. In order to establish what material of flying saucer intelligence value concerning the ULAT is available in these reports. 1. The ATIC interrogation reports, numbered 1 to 93, the last dated December 1950, present significant information on a broad variety of subjects and areas where witnesses were detained subsequent to the post-1947 incident. The unpublished documents validate records of interrogation derived from the accumulated reports on interviews of selected witnesses from New Mexico and military personnel involved in removal of evidence. 2. In this digest, primary attention has been paid to information of biomedical intelligence interests, particularly in the BW programs. Biomedical intelligence is only one of the substantive fields covered by these interrogation reports. 3. For the most part, the sources interrogated were not trained observers, and their stories indicate they have been subject to the familiar pitfalls common to all eyewitnesses. It must be emphasized that because the interrogators were not always specialists in this phenomena of celestial sciences, there is much lack of detail. 4. Because of the unique nature of the material under study, a multi-layered security structure has been in effect, Most of the results have been given to private research labs for further study. 5. Majestic SS and P are currently focused on psych-op development for Cold War CI activities. 6. Utilization of paperclip specialists has yielded valuable results in new weapons research in areas of flight dynamics, biological and chemical agents, mind control, and intelligence gathering techniques. B. Panel's contribution to Majestic. 1. The contributions of the President's Special Panel to the Majestic-12 project has supplemented information on the ULAT program, which could not be obtained in any other way. Although only a small part of the project, interrogation in technical and biomedical field, has produced at least 8,973 items for the files of military intelligence, GHC/IPU. Of these items, 1,764 have been published, up to December 1950, in the ULAT Exploitation Majestic series. The coverage of the New Mexico incidents, from the overall intelligence point of view, has been very good. After the panel's review was initiated, GHC/IPU published in March 1951 two summary Majestic series, numbers 98 and number 99, of the series titled New Medical Facilities for Biological Warfare, New Genetic and Pharmaceutical Development Programs. These summary reports have apparently made much of the AEC file material, since 6,014 items are now reported as published medical items in the interrogation reports. See Majestic Series, number 98, page 1. 2. For the clarification of published reports or for elaboration of the information of fragmentary nature, resort may be had to the AEC files of unpublished data, as well as to the possibility of reinterrogating the sources. C. Review of the military assessment. With current development obligations, troop commitment, and few air groups with standby fighters with radar capability, the Joint Chiefs are unable at the present time to effect a complete and all-encompassing defense plan that would guarantee the protection and well-functioning of the national political order. Personnel, material, and logistical requirements for such a defense would deplete current resources. If such a crisis should occur, in government failures to defend and assure the public's trust, it is the belief of the Joint Chiefs that the following would ensue: insecurity and mistrust, employment of subversive agents, infiltrations, incitement of disorder and chaos to disrupt normal economy, and undermine popular support of government and its leaders, seizure of authority without reference to the will of the people. D. Technology. At present, the ability to reconstruct the technology that may be eons ahead of us, the boost to our current efforts would be incalculable. Areas such as aircraft and missile design would benefit only after a working understanding has been achieved. Weapons sciences will follow. E. Nuclear weapons development. Miniaturization of atomic bomb components is the goal of the AEC and the AFSWP. Studies at MIT indicate that such a technology is within reach before the decade is out. The apparent use of microcircuitry found in the recovered plane form indicated that miniaturization, low power transmission, light conductor/sensitive components are required for interplanetary space travel. Atomic engines and nuclear propulsion technologies could be advanced based upon current use of hydrogen and electromagnetic research and weapons components developed in U.S. and U.K. F. Biological warfare programs. BW programs in U.S. and U.K. are in field test stages. Discovery of new virus and bacteria agents so lethal that serums derived by genetic samples extracted from bodies found in New Mexico have yielded new strains of a retrovirus not totally understood, but give promise of the ultimate BW weapon. The dangers lies in the spread of airborne and bloodborne outbreaks of diseases in large populations, with no medical cures available. G. Genetic and pharmaceutical development programs. Current research in U.S. and U.K. can be accelerated when studies are complete. Understanding the human makeup through EBE research will bring a varied wealth of information in how cells replicate themselves and may help in developing new drugs and markets. Healthcare industries are considered the best source of R&D for DoD programs. H. New materials development. Conclusions reached by the Air Material Command in 1948 upon the close examination of the material structure of the Corona and Oscura Peak, New Mexico sites, compelled the Air Force to launch a new machinability research program. Samples tested and evaluated by the AMB suggested that future materials would have to incorporate new alloys and composites if space exploration and hypersonic dynamics are to be achieved. As a result, new machine techniques are underway for high-temperature alloys and titanium. I. Planned future rocket development programs. There have been a number of failed high-altitude rocket launches to study radiation effects on living organisms. The Air Force's Project Blossom, conducted at Holloman Air Force Base, is but one example. C-2 rocket launches at the White Sands Proving Ground, New Mexico, have been knocked down by undetermined jamming. The source of the jamming is believed to come from UFO sightings on or near the range. Guidance systems are believed to be vulnerable, and this presents a clear and present danger. Such keeper flights carrying nuclear weapons are too horrific to contemplate. Shielding of systems and circuits are underway. J. Nuclear propulsion development programs. The AEC and NEPA are currently conducting research for advanced technologies and atomic engines and radical propulsion studies. Systems studies at Los Alamos, New Mexico, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and Langley, Virginia, are attempting to duplicate the water drive and plastic core elements found on the engine, being kept at HFAB. Interrogation of hydrogen base fuels and electrohydrodynamic technology may open up for us development of superaerodynes with Mach 5 capabilities. K. Intelligence gathering and analysis. Based on what is known of the technology and intelligence of the visitors, it is fairly certain that there will be other sightings and encounters of a spectacular nature. As to purpose and modus operandi, we are not certain, but it is clear that if these visitors had conquest in mind, it would not be difficult for them, given their ability to penetration our airspace at will, and their ability to jam radio, telephone, television, and teletype transmissions, let alone power grids. So far, reports and sightings are blatant and deliberate, thus allowing our intelligence agencies to gather good data. As to the analyses of such reports, only a continuous wave of sightings and encounters worldwide would provide enough data for a clear understanding of intent. L. Foreign policy and national security. To date, only Great Britain, Canada, and the Soviet Union are contacted and appraised in the event invasion is imminent. It is the current policy of the administration that no other foreign countries will be consulted or advised. The national security status of the Majestic operation exceeds that of the H-bomb development. M. Domestic and constitutional issues. In dealing with clear violations of civic law and guarantees as defined under the Constitution, it has been discussed among members of Majestic-12 that such protection of individual rights are outweighed by the nature of the threat. Only a declaration of war or a national emergency would give the government the power to enact martial law and rescind individual rights. N. Social, religious, and scientific reaction. It has been the downfall of great nations and cultures when a new reality is not readily accepted by the masses. The social order was severely ravaged by the last World War. with great damage to the religious dogma of Earth without end, thus making a government disclosure irresponsible and inherently dangerous. The scientific community would predictably question such a reaction as a world suffering from a Buck Rogers delirium and attack anyone of their own ranks for believing such fantasy. Science itself may undergo a traumatic transformation, with belief structures in shambles, putting the institutions under scrutiny by the layman, thus eroding any credibility. Science would be left with an image of credulity. O. Cold War development. This is one of the most dangerous phenomena of the 20th century. To misidentify a flight of space objects for actual Russian bombers, or to dismiss Russian bombers as phantoms, is the most idiotic approach to take. Even though governments may distrust each other, it is the responsibility and creed of the military and intelligence professional to prevent wanton death and destruction of his country. It is advisable to maintain some form of direct communication with a hostile enemy before taking false assumptions of his response if faulty data wrongly indicate such. Even using the flying saucer ruse to create fear and confusion among your enemies, leaders, could result in accidental war. Even our early analyses of recovered plane forms in 197 led to the wrong assumption that the Russians were preparing a sneak attack on the continent. P. Government policy of control and denial. One of the most difficult aspects of controlling the perception in the public's mind of government attempts of denial and ignorance is actual control of the press. Until a clear intent is established with diplomatic relations firmly in hand, it is the recommendation of the President's special panel, with concurrence from Majestic-12, that a policy of strict denial of the events surfacing from Roswell, New Mexico, and any other incident of such caliber be enforced. An interactive program of controlled releases to the media, in such fashion to discredit any civilian investigation, be instituted in accordance with the provisions of the 1947 National Security Act. Annex A. 1. The panel's review of the AEC and AFSWP investigation of Site L1 and the Air Force Site L2 has led the panel to conclude that the objects under study are the result of a high-altitude ejection of a escape cylinder from a fatal mid-air collision of two unidentified circular planeform aircraft of interplanetary nature. 2. Of particular interest to the panel was Site L2, located at latitude 33 by 40 by 31, longitude 106 by 28 to 28, as this site yielded the most material for analysis. 3. Site L2 may be closely associated with Site L1 due to the similarity of material covered, and that the impact at Site L1 and debris pattern suggests that the craft hit the ground at a sharp angle and continued to remain airborne until coming to a rest at Site L2. 4. The craft found at Site L2 is either the remains of a rocket plane or a powered glider. What remained of the power plant was examined and determined to be of a magnetic drive propulsion powered by a fusion reactor of sorts. 5. Lack of wiring, fuel systems, cables, motors, hydraulics, intakes, exhaust, and surface controls strongly suggest that the craft was designed to travel outside of our atmosphere. 6. The second craft that impacted at Site L3 provided very little evidence that it too was similar in design, as the impact was vertical in nature and at very high speed. It is believed that the debris discovered on 2nd July 1947 by a local rancher was the result of a mid-air collision with an X-plane from HAFB, another unidentified object, or possibly collided with both. Radar film and tower logs do not explain the merging of 3 radar targets prior to collision and subsequent crashes. 7. There were 5 recovered bodies, 2 of which were found in severely damaged escape cylinder, and the remaining 3 were found some distance away from the cylinder. All 5 appeared to have suffered from sudden decompression and heat suffocation. Recovery and autopsies of the occupants are covered in detail in a separate study, Gray Suit within Projects 612 and 621. ULAT Exploitation Majestic Series 4, pages 40 through 102, as a result of damage sustained from unknown causes. 8. The panel was concerned over the contamination of several SED personnel upon coming into contact with debris near the power plant. One technician was overcome and collapsed when he attempted the removal of a body. Another medical technician went into a coma for hours after placing a body in a rubber body bag. All 4 were rushed to Los Alamos for observation. All 4 later died of seizures and profuse bleeding. All 4 were wearing protective suits when they came in contact with body fluids from the occupants. 9. Autopsies on the 4 dead SED technicians are not conclusive. It is believed that the 4 may have suffered from some form of toxin or a highly contagious disease. Tissue samples are currently being kept at Fort Detrick, Maryland. 10. The panel was also concerned with the detection of airborne release of radiation over the state of New Mexico. AFTAC detachment from McClellan Air Force Base has conducted several airborne monitor flights over Site L2. Radiation readings indicate a high neutron count was recorded as the plane flew over the site. Neutron count dropped off as the plane flew a considerable distance from the site. A report has been filed with the USA EDS. 11. Detection of a high-altitude explosion was recorded by Project Mogul, constant level balloon on 4th July 1947. Radar from White Sands Proving Ground and HAFB also detected a surge. 12. Parachute recovery team from HAFB were dispatched to Site L2. Upon arrival, the team, realizing the nature of the crash, radioed instructions and marked crash site for the investigators that arrived later. 13. In the opinion of Senior AEC Medical Officer, current medical equipment and supplies are wholly inadequate in dealing with the large-scale outbreak of the alien virus. 14. Facilities at Los Alamos and Mayo clinics were considered as lacking in the current climate. 15. On 26 September 1947, the first meeting of the MSC-1 was held to discuss the New Mexico incidents and how to implement the policy established by MJ-12 SSA&P. Annex B. 1. Upon the creation of the Majestic-12 Group by Special Executive Order dated 24 September 1947, and given powers of authority by PDD/1-1 dated 26 September 1947, the panel was empowered to convene and conduct a review of all available evidence and data collected by government and military intelligence agencies. 2. Because of the unique nature of the 1947-1948 crisis, the panel recommended to MAJCOM-1 that the authority of the Secretary of Defense be invoked in order to implement MSCIS No. 1/1. 3. A meeting was held on 8 December 1947 between CIA and IAC concerning the IAB. Dr. Vannevar Bush, chairman of the panel, requested the DCI to convey the contents of a letter from Dr. Bush to Secretary Forrestal, thus breaking the deadlock over issues concerning authority and policymaking dealing with the New Mexico incidents and subsequent exploitation of the finds. 4. On 13 January 1948, the MSC, with input from the panel recommended to the President that the third-party group from outside of the government be established for the purpose of conducting an impartial and objective survey of the activities and personnel of the CIA. 5. As a result of the DCI's lack of timely intelligence estimates and poor coordination of intelligence activities for Majestic, the MSC Survey Group issued its findings. At the suggestion of the panel chairman, the IAC met on 16 June 1948, at which the conclusions of the survey group were reviewed. 6. On 18 February 1949, the IAC met for the purpose of proposing some changes to the CIA draft proposal on MAJCOM activities. 7. General Joseph McNarney, with the assistance of Carlisle Hummelstein and Robert Blum, prepare MSC 50/1. On 7 July 1949, the MSC adopted the recommendation of NSC 50/1, which directed the DCI to enlist the activities of the IAC in Majestic intelligence activities. 8. MAJCOM 1 meets with the President in May 1950. 9. Admiral Hillenkotter leaves position as DCI on 7 October 1950. 10. MAJCOM 1, with assistance of the panel, persuades the President to establish the Psychological Strategy Board on 4 April 1951. 11. Panel member at MAJCOM 4 meet with MAJCOM 1 on 10 October 1950, along with members of IAC. The Chief of Global Survey Group desires estimates requested by the Pentagon concerning possible defense project for Majestic Logistics, SSP-1. 12. On 6 December 1950, MAJCOM 4 alerts MAJCOM 1 of a breach in DEW Greenland of a UFO on a southwesterly course. HQ-IPU alerted and dispatched a scientific team to E-1 Indio Guerra on the Texas-Mexico border. MAJCOM 4 orders a recovery team from Project Stork and Moondust to crash site. Teams transport debris from crash site to ADC-H-AFB and to the AEC laboratories in Sandia, New Mexico. 13. MAJCOM 1 enlists the panel's aviation consultants for the purpose of advising the Princeton consultants. 14. On 20 December 1950, MAJCOM 1 is provided with the Black Book summaries prepared by the Watch Committee. Beginning every Friday, the President is briefed on world situation and on Majestic via the CIA Weekly Current Intelligence Review. 15. At the request of a panel member, Cardinal Francis Spellman met with the President to discuss the containment within the Catholic Church and its hierarchy of religious speculation if mass sightings occur. Such containment was successful during the 1947 sightings, when Cardinal Spellman met with the Secretary of War on 29 June. The President has been briefed on Defense Plan 4P, which was written in part by the panel member. 16. In support of the Majestic program for developing atomic engine, panel members and their association with the AEC, the Armed Forces, and the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics have consulted Majestic for the development of nuclear fission reactor for powered flight studies. 17. Atomic engines for aircraft built here on Earth faces many difficulties because of size and weight of the reactor and radiation shielding. Such a nuclear power plant would give an aircraft unlimited range. 18. Panel members contributed to the writing of ULAT Exploitation, Majestic Series 5, titled Hypersonic Small Disturbance Theory, which gives consideration to a three-dimensional body fixed in a steady, uniform hypersonic stream. The theory assumes that shock waves can be approximated by abrupt discontinuities and the plane-form body being thin, so that the slope of the local surface in the stream direction is uniformly small. 19. MAJCOM-4. A member of the panel was instrumental in supporting the creation of the Air Force's Scientific Advisory Board, which MAJCOM-5 endorsed. 20. MAJCOM-5 recommended to the Air Force Chief of Staff that the top-secret report, Where We Stand, be the basis for ULAT development. MAJCOM-5 urged the COS to enact the ideas of another report, Science, the Key to Air Supremacy. Major General Curtis LeMay, Staff Director of Research and Development, seconded MAJCOM-5's views. 21. The panel chairman argued for funding for air defense projects that would be useful in combating the new menace instead of developing ballistic missiles, which have proved to be useless. 22. On June 15, 1947, Dr. Theodore Kahn Karman chaired the first meeting of the SAB and discussed how the Air Force could prepare for a possible air attack in light of the numerous UFO sightings over the U.S. 23. On 14 May 1948, MAJCOM-4 arranged for the promulgation of Air Force Regulation 2230, which restored the powers of the SAB as agreed upon by Karman and LeMay in 1946. 24. MAJCOM-4 had a prepared speech for reading at a meeting of scientific advisors on 7 April 1949, highlighting new Air Force R&D organization and structures of UFO research for ULAT. Karman enlisted the aid of a panel member to persuade MAJCOM-4 to endorse a separate establishment free from AMC and Pentagon control. 25. On 2 January 1950, a plan was presented to the Air Staff Council for separate R&D for ULAT. 26. On 23 January 1950, Research and Development Command and the Air Staff Deputy Chief of Staff for Research and Development was created. 27. In May 1951, panel member MAJCOM-4 endorsed Karman's creation of AGARD and his presentation at the Pentagon of a lecture called Mobilization of Scientific Effort in Western European Countries. Annex C. 1. Military commanders are taught a basic premise that the ideal defense as characterized by Karl von Clausewitz is a shield of blows. When an enemy attack begins, the defender yields the initiative, using his prepared positions and knowledge of the battleground to slow his momentum, and to strike the enemy with repeated, unexpected blows. Such a defense can work only when the enemy is detected, his strength known, his weaponry identified, and his tactics and movements are revealed. 2. In the annals of warfare, mass disappearances of soldiers and their equipment are rare, but are on record. In the 18th century, during the Spanish War of Succession, 6,000 soldiers were reported to have disappeared, together with their weapons and equipment, horses included. In 1885, about 600 French colonial soldiers disappeared near Saigon, French Indochina, without a trace of them nor their equipment. On August 21, 1915, members of the New Zealand Army Corps' 1st Field Company signed sworn statements that they saw the 1/4th Norfolk Regiment disappear in an unusually thick brown cloud, which seemed to move and rise upward and vanish. There were no traces of the regiment nor their equipment. No explanation can be found in the historical records of the Imperial War Museum archives. In 1939, over 2,900 Chinese nationalist troops were reported missing from their camp, just south of Nanking. Again, men, equipment, guns were missing, though campfires and mess tents were undisturbed. During the Pacific Campaign, there have been instances where whole platoons and larger units seem to have disappeared without any sign of combat or a struggle. Men, equipment, weapons, vanished without a trace. In all instances, the disappearances occurred in tropical climate and in the heat of battle or near combat zones. 3. Missing aircraft, pilots, and crews are of special concern to the military when no explanations fit the usual reasons outside of combat. One such incident is the disappearance of a flight of 5 U.S. Navy TBM-3 Avenger torpedo bombers from NAS Fort Lauderdale on 5 December 1945. While no explanation as to why navigation instruments on all 5 aircraft could have failed at the same time, and efforts to rescue the 14 crewmen were unsuccessful. It is believed that Flight 19 encountered a phenomenon of celestial nature. The last known radio transmission from the instructor pilot was heard by a ham operator. "Don't come after me. They look like they are from outer space. I'm at 2,300 feet. Don't come after me." After one of the most intensive air-sea rescue operations in U.S. naval history, the Naval Board of Inquiry said, "We were not able to make even a good guess as to what happened." 4. On 7 January 1948, a ANG F-51 pilot was lost near Godman Air Force Base, Kentucky. After being directed to land his flight of 4 F-51s by the tower, Captain Thomas Mantell pursued a large metallic object alone after 2 pilots returned to Godman Air Force Base. And finally, his wingman was ordered to return to the field. It is believed that Mantell was following a large structured object not in the flight path of a classified Navy Skyhook balloon. Mantell radioed Godman Tower that he was at 22,000 feet and still climbing. At one point, Mantell said that the object had paced his aircraft for several minutes, then would speed up. His last transmission to the tower was, "It appears to be a metallic object, and it is of tremendous size. It appears to be a metallic object, or possibly the reflection of sun from a metallic object." When Godman personnel arrived at the crash scene, Mantell's F-51 was found in many pieces, not large sections as one would find from a free-stick descent. The wreckage contained unusual damage, as if Mantell's plane was repeatedly hit by shotgun blasts. Some of the metal had pitted surfaces and unusual searing. All rubber material had disintegrated in a soft powdery substance. There was no indication of gunfire damage or fuel burn. The crash site and debris exhibited an unusually high amount of radiation of undetermined nature. The site was cleared of debris and covered. Mantell's plane was subsequently sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio, for examination. An autopsy was conducted on the body and interned in storage for future study. It is believed by the Air Force investigators that Mantell's plane had been destroyed by an ionization phenomenon, possibly from the propulsion wash of the object's exhaust. 5. From 1949 to late 1950, there have been several crashes of B-36 bombers on routine Arctic patrol that bear all the earmarks of the Mantell incident. None of the crews were found. The atomic bombs were not recovered, thus creating a serious problem for the Air Force when nuclear weapons are lost over friendly countries. 6. The death of 2 Air Force counterintelligence officers in the crash of their B-25 aircraft en route to Hamilton Air Force Base, California, after interviewing 2 auxiliary CG men who reported 6 UFOs over Maury Island, Washington, in June 1947. CIC agent Chrisman had spoken to Kenneth Arnold, who, on 26 June 1947, had reported a flight of UFOs over Mount Rainier, Washington, and filed his report after he had spoken to Captain Davison and Lieutenant Brown. The material given to Davison and Brown was believed to come from Maury Island and may be celestial, fragments containing metal from a nuclear reactor from a UFO. Fragments were turned over to CIA agent Shaw, and Chrisman was ordered to the Alaskan ADC for assignment and Project Ivy. 7. Aerial interference with military aircraft has demonstrated the ability to observe our air operations in war and peacetime conditions. During the war, over 900 near-miss incidents were reported by Allied pilots and crews in all theater of operation. One of the most dramatic near-miss encounters occurred on 14 October 1043, 8th Air Force Mission 115, over Schweinfurt, Germany. B-17 crews reported many formations of silvery disk flying down into B-17 formations. Several times during the bombing mission, large objects were seen following the disk descent into the formations. Unlike previous reports, no engine failures or airframe damage was reported. After the surrender of Nazi Germany, GAF fighter pilots were interrogated by AF intelligence concerning Mission 115. GAF did not have any aircraft above our bombers at that time. 8. Of 1 August 1946, a C-47 piloted by Captain Jack E. Puckett, Assistant Chief of Flying Safety for TAC, experienced a near miss of a cylindrical-shaped aircraft about 100 meters in length. The incident occurred at an altitude of 4,000 feet, northeast of Tampa, Florida. Just 1,000 yards on a collision course, the UFO flipped over sideways, crossing the flight path of Puckett's C-47. 3 other crew members observed the UFO and described it as being over twice the length of a B-29 and cylindrical in shape with illuminated windows. Observers on the C-47 reported a stream of fire trailing the object. The crew and Puckett watched the UFO for over 3 minutes. TAC radar stations had tracked a large target approaching the C-47 and then performed a right-angle course change while flying at speeds of excess of 600 miles per hour. 9. On 1 October 1948, a A&G F-51 pilot engaged a blinking luminous UFO in a dogfight-style encounter over Fargo, North Dakota. 10. On 24 April 1949, engineers and technicians from the White Sands Proving Ground observed a elliptically shaped object moving in a eastward course at a very high altitude. The object was discovered while tracking a skyhook balloon through a theodolite. The object appeared whitish in color and pale yellow at the tail end. The object was estimated to be 2.5 times as long as it was wide. It was difficult to see any structure of the object as it was moving at a very high speed. The object was observed through a theodolite for approximately 1 minute before disappearing in a steep climb. The object was estimated to be traveling at an altitude of over 60 miles. 11. From 1944 to early 1951, our atomic bomb and component plants have been the target of UFO reconnaissance. Of late, our NEPA projects are of special attention to the visitors. During some of the flights, radiation levels have risen sharply, then dropping suddenly to normal. In some instances, plutonium production has been halted due to contamination of plant personnel during these sightings of low-level flights. 12. On 25 October 1950, the Superintendent of Security, Oak Ridge, filed a security report for I-10. He stated that a round object, about 10 feet in diameter, burnished yellow in color, hung low over the control zone. The object would move slightly from one side to the other and emit a low hum sound. 13. On 24 October 1950, the Assistant Chief of Security, NEPA Division, Oak Ridge, observed a similar object near the restricted area, restricted flying zone. The object emitted a varying color of light from red to green to blue to orange. This sighting was confirmed by an Air Force officer also of NEPA Division, Oak Ridge. Radar from Knoxville Airport tracked several slow-moving targets flying over the southeast sector of the restricted zone. Fighters were vectored to the radar targets, but the pilot reported no visual contact. 14. Naval aircraft with nuclear weapons delivery capability have reported a sudden drop in neutron counters. Aircraft carrier storage of nuclear weapons have also reported unusual neutron counts. During recent NATO naval maneuvers, the USS Franklin D. Roosevelt has been trailed by numerous UFOs for long periods on and off since 1950. Conclusion. The future of American citizens, and the world for that matter, are jeopardized by today's developments as portentous as those leading to World War II. Given the growing challenge from the Soviet Union and her satellites and the intrusion of extraterrestrials, the United States is compelled, therefore, to initiate realistic lines of action to protect United States strategic interests. Recommendations. It is recommended that the United States government provide as early as practicable, moral, advisory, and material support to the Majestic-12 project in order to contribute to the early establishment of peace in the world in consonance with the enunciated principles of the United Nations, and to protect United States strategic interests against forces which now threaten them.